and welcome to Super Respectable. My name is David Lewis, coming at you from Den Haag in the Netherlands. And with me, as always, is Tosh Rahman. Tosh, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I am good. Everything is wonderful. The Christmas decorations are up, and I should be feeling festive.
You mean in your house or in the city? Or
Oh,
both?
in the city, because where we live, we're on like a main shopping street, and I can see that they've installed like Christmas lights to try and get people into the shopping spirit already.
I thought Christmas was
Um,
like canceled this year, no? Or like globally?
they're trying,
Or the
well, they don't know. So first they're canceling it, then they're opening up again. It's like the rules change every few days. So,
yeah,
um, I
that's
mean, whatever it says in the Bible, I think it's still there. You know, the Christmas is every year, but the whole commercial Western shopping aspect of it, that remains to be seen.
it's yeah. That's a good. I didn't even give it a lot of thought. I don't know how the holiday because it is Thanksgiving in the States. I think this week, right? And so we had Thanksgiving a couple months back in Canada. So I think this is the official kickoff of the holiday season from now until December 25th, 26th.
And
January
when is
1st.
the shopping day? Black Friday? Is it this Friday?
That's a great question. I fully don't even understand what Black Friday is, but well, can you explain it to me?
It
I
I
know what
think
it is,
it's
but I don't know what it is.
I think it's when the
People
masses
go,
beat each other up to get a TV, and they stay up all night to try and get one, and they
yeah,
freeze and get coronavirus. So I
it's
think
capital. Yeah,
it's capitalism supercharged. So
supercharged.
I think it's a time of the year where people like Jeff Bezos will get richer
Yeah,
and happier, and
it's a
there we
time of
go.
giving. It's a time of giving and caring for our billionaires to make sure they stay okay. I would not doubt if they report like one day later that Bezos' net worth went up like $5 billion after one day of Amazon purchases or whatever it is, because
Yeah, he's having a very good year. I think the rest of us has had a very
very
uh,
good year.
abysmal year. Jeff Bezos is a happy man.
If you, I know we talked about this last week. If you were a billionaire during COVID, what precautions would you take using your money to prevent yourself from getting COVID? Like, would you be living inside of like an incubation tube, a
I would
bubble?
go. I'd have one of those bubbles. You know those things where you go down a hill and you just have this bubble. I would just go everywhere in that bubble,
Yeah,
and no one could come near me, and whatever. I'd be safe. So that's cool. But the thing is, Jeff Bezos, he's quite a private guy in normal times. I mean,
yeah,
he does do talks from time to time, but he's not really out there. He's really like, Elon
true.
Musk is always on Twitter saying stuff and at
Getting
events
COVID.
around the
Yeah,
world. Yeah, but Jeff Bezos, he's quite discreet.
yeah. Is that scary? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. I
I
mean,
don't know. I don't think it really helps his reputation. I think
yeah, I don't
maybe
think he's got that great of a reputation. Both, I think, as a businessman, maybe, but as a philanthropist or as an individual, people, I don't think see him in a great light. But I don't know. I mean, we only started seeing Bill Gates like in the last 20 years. We didn't really see him during a while he was like working at Microsoft or building or anything like that. So who knows?
Hey, do you know who came after Bill Gates in Microsoft? Wasn't it?
Oh,
There was this big. It was the total opposite of Bill Gates. So Bill Gates was like the tech guy. He started the company,
Palmer, right? Steve
obviously.
Palmer?
Steve Ballmer, yeah,
Ballmer,
and
yeah.
he came from the sales team,
Oh, really?
and it's hilarious. I really recommend watching his methods as a CEO compared to Bill Gates.
Yeah,
I mean, Bill Gates was ruthless in his own way.
ruthless.
Like he got done for some anti-competitive practices, if I'm not mistaken, in the '90s. But
Yeah,
I mean, he's a pretty quiet guy. He's very smart and cerebral and reads books all the time. But if you
yeah,
watch anything to do with Steve Ballmer,
yeah,
he's like a cheerleader.
yeah.
And it's very interesting to watch differing styles of CEOs of the same company.
I feel
Um,
yeah. My wife and I, we just watched The Social Dilemma a few days ago on Netflix.
oh, yeah,
Have you seen it?
I haven't, no.
All these, you should watch it. It's interesting. All these tech people really just seem like they're destroying the world on the one hand, and then they're actually giving humanity something useful on the other. So I don't know. I remember when I was a big like a computer science geek, kind of like in high school and junior school. So I was really into computers, and I could take them apart and build them again, and the whole thing. So I remember watching like Revenge of the Geeks, Revenge of something, and this and that. And so I think again, I think we see Bill Gates in a very different light now because he was very ruthless and he did a lot of things. He went to court a number of times as well, and like Microsoft was really under the scrutiny. And now he's like the Bill Gates, and I forgot his wife's name, Melinda Gates
Melinda.
Foundation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think he did the right thing from a PR perspective.
yeah, totally.
Making friends with Warren Buffett, that's always a good move. He's a nice guy. That helps your image. And then the foundation.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you've seen this. There's a whole conspiracy theory around Bill Gates online about how he's involved with the vaccine. And yeah, it's just the world we live in now.
You should watch the 4-part. Oh, sorry. Have you seen it? The documentary Inside Bill's Head or whatever on Netflix. There's a 4-part documentary on him as a philanthropist. It's really interesting. You should watch
it. More spin. That's what they want you to believe about. Anyways, I'm kidding. I'm kidding, everybody.
I'm kidding, Bill.
Don't hurt me.
Anyways, but
yeah. So I thought this would be a kind of an interesting lead into our story this week. It's my turn to present.
Sure.
Because last week you talked about Mukesh Ambani. That's the name, right?
The billionaire from India.
Owner of the most expensive private property in the world. And
totally.
Very much in your face type of property. It's huge. It stands over and lords over the slum of in Mumbai. Not exactly discreet. I don't know how he is in other aspects of his life, but that move alone kind of shows you something. So I thought I would talk this week about someone who was a very discreet millionaire, and it comes from the same side of wealth, but from a totally different angle. So it's the story of Ronald Read, and he was a janitor who was a millionaire.
Really?
Yeah.
Cool.
I think it's a very interesting story. It's like an anonymous millionaire, like the millionaire next door type of thing.
Okay.
So I'll get going with the story. He was born in Vermont in 1921 to a poor farming family, and Vermont is essentially like it should be part of Canada. It's a very nice forested part of the U.S. with quite liberal-minded people.
Yeah, it's very beautiful.
One day maybe Trudeau gets imperial ambitions, and we'll take that over.
It's it's where Ben and Jerry's ice cream started as well.
Exactly. Canada is missing an ice cream empire in its domain. So he was the first in his family to graduate from high school, which is a very nice achievement. And he served in World War II.
Yeah.
I think he served in North Africa. He had some time in Italy. And then he returned to Vermont, where he then worked as a gas station attendant and a mechanic for 25 years.
Okay.
So a very humble profession, very low key, just, filling people's tanks and fixing their cars up. It's a very necessary job, but not one that pays too much money as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
So he did that for 25 years. And it was while he was working at the gas station that he met his wife, who he married in 1960. Then they bought a house together. I think it was about $12,000. I'm not sure if that's in today's money or in 1960 dollars and what that would be in today's money.
Yeah.
But it seems like a pretty reasonable amount of money, even then. And so then he lived there with her and the stepchildren. He never had kids of his own, but he cared for the stepchildren as if they were his own. And then his wife, unfortunately and very sadly, died of cancer 10 years later, in 1970.
Yeah.
And so he never remarried. And then he retired from the gas station in 1979. I guess possibly he had enough money at that point. How old would he have been? 58. That's not very old to retire. Yeah. So that's maybe a first little giveaway. People should have maybe questioned him at that point and said, you're 58 years old, a gas station attendant, you got a few more years in you. Maybe you want to keep pumping some gas.
Sure.
But no, he got bored of retirement very quickly. And so he sought out another job and he became a part-time janitor at at a J.C. Penney. I think it's a department store. I'm not sure if it still exists.
I don't know, but I know of JCPenney, of course, but
JCPenney.
I don't know if it exists
So
anymore.
So he did that for another 17 years. So his career was 25 years of pumping gas and 17 years of being a janitor at a J.C. Penney.
So yeah, he's up to 75 years of age.
So, yeah. So it's a good chunk of time now. I think it's time to retire. And then just to add some little color to his life, his hobbies, this very interesting character included wood shopping, stamp collecting, and coin collecting. Did you get involved in it? Were you into any of these things?
I collected money when I was a kid from different places around the world. Like if I ever went, and no, I used to like have like the cool different currencies and like bills and coins and so like not like I wasn't going to like conferences or like places, but it'd be kind of cool to collect a penny from here or like $1 from there. And I collected stamps for a while too. That was cool. Were you a collector of anything?
I've never chopped wood. I've seen people cut some wood up.
I'd love to learn. Yeah.
It seems very Canadian. So that's cool. Stamp collecting I did for a bit, then I got quite bored and I didn't see any kind of point in it. Coin collecting I did for a while, and I think that's kind of fun. I think I still have like some coins from around the world here. It's hard now that we have the euro, it makes it less fun to have coins.
It's cool with coins when you pick up a coin you actively and you try to find the oldest one. Like if your one says like 1902 or 1915 or whatever, you're like, oh, this is really, really cool. You know, most of them say like 2020 or 2019. But
yeah, I remember my grandmother gave me some of her coin collection, and I thought it was pretty cool. There were some from like, I don't think there's any from the 19th century, but there were some from like early 1900s. And the thing is, they weren't worth that much. It was just cool to look at. I thought, wow, 1905, maybe it's worth a lot of money, but it's still quite common for those things.
Have you ever on money issue? What's the largest denomination, or what's the largest amount of money you've ever found, like out and about? You know, sometimes when you're walking around, you see something shiny, you go over to it, and it's like a loonie, and you're like, oh, a loonie. By the way, everyone is a dollar bill, a dollar coin in Canada. But like, have you ever found a large amount?
I haven't been that lucky. I found when I was a kid $20 outside of a pharmacy, Shoppers Drug Mart.
Yeah.
But we're such an honest family. My mom said you have to go back in the store and give it to the staff, and if anybody comes back for it, it's theirs. But if no one comes back for it, they'll call us and you can have it.
Your mom, so nice.
So that was very nice. And eventually the store was very honest and they gave me the money
really
after a week or so. Yeah. So I got $20 out of it.
This is back in like 1990 something, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't think that would happen anymore in 2020, by the way.
Thing is, like here in the Netherlands, it's a very cashless society.
Yeah.
So people don't really handle too much cash here. Like some restaurants and shops, they say on the front saying no cash accepted, only debit card. So coin collecting may be going the way of the dodo.
That's strange. I would have imagined
that's quite interesting.
Because it's so interesting you say that, because in other parts of the world they completely rely more on cash rather than everything else, and purposely so. In Malaysia, when we were living there, a lot of places didn't even take cards. You know, they were supposed to legally, but they didn't. And I think one of the reasons is so, you know, with cash, it's easy to fudge the numbers on your reports or to not declare them as it is. But with debit and credit, of course, you have to. There's a record of it, right? So.
The Netherlands,
you
the tax dodging happens at a higher level. So on the people on the street can be honest.
Yeah.
I remember like coming from Hungary, it was a shock because in Hungary it was very much a cash-based society, and even when I had to pay rent, it was a bit of a nerve-wracking experience because I had to take out my rent money once a month and pay in cash to the landlord, which was super sketchy, and I thought it was really dodgy. And what made it really pretty hilarious was I asked my landlord, like, what do you do? What's your job? And he said, oh, I work for like the tax agency, tax inspection agency. I was like, okay, well, I won't say any more, but seems a bit funky.
Sorry, I didn't mean to sidetrack
Yeah.
from your story. So this guy
No,
is
no, no.
75 years old. He worked as a gas pumper for 25 of those 75 years, and then as a janitor in the latter years.
Yeah, and so aside from those hobbies, he was also he would be a regular at a local cafe. He would go for breakfast almost every day.
Every
Just
day.
have and the cafe was inside of the local hospital for some reason. I guess it was the place where they had the cheapest food.
The
So
best.
he would go for a coffee, an English muffin, and peanut butter like almost every day.
Every day.
And it was probably super cheap. And apparently people thought he was like hard up for cash.
Yeah.
He looked pretty poor.
Yeah.
His clothing was really
Cool.
shabby. And so people would often like offer to pay for his meals. He's like, no, it's cool. I'm fine. Thank you. And sadly, his favorite cafe closed inside the hospital. So he ended up going to another diner and having the same breakfast. But he ended up being friends with at that cafe with the director of the hospital. So he had a very close relationship with the local hospital, which I'll connect to later in the story.
Sure.
And aside from these activities, he was also an investor in the stock market. So this is where the money gets made.
Okay.
So starting in, I think, 1959, possibly sooner, but that's like the earliest record I saw. He bought shares in a number of blue chip American companies. So blue chip companies means like pretty stable, solid, long-standing companies like Procter and Gamble, General Electric, Johnson Johnson, even the jam company like J.M. Smucker. So he would buy all these like big name American companies, ones that are mostly still around today.
Cool.
And so we would focus on companies that paid dividends. So they paid out part of their profits in cash to the shareholders. Yeah. And then he would then take those dividends and either reinvest them in those stocks or buy other companies. And that was his strategy. And he would, so the director at the hospital that he became friends with, he said, hey, you should join a library. And he got his library card and would go there almost every day. And he would read the Wall Street Journal. And he would read other publications. And he was amazed by this fact. He's like, he couldn't believe that you could get all this information for free. And so he regularly stayed on top of like what was going on in the market by going in every day and reading the newspaper. And
I'm assuming this is like after he retired?
I think it was after he finished. Oh no, I think he was still a gas station attendant. It was in the later years of his work as a gas station attendant. So
like during his like mornings and his free time and stuff like that.
He wasn't so young, but I think 40s, 50s. So yeah, he died, I think, at the age of 92 or something. So he still had like his money invested, still had like another 50 years to run. So it's still a huge chunk of time to stay invested, which is another good lesson for all our listeners out there.
Okay. Give us the points afterwards, because you're an investor too. I know nothing about this.
Yeah.
So give us your tips afterwards.
I'll be sure to do that. All the wealth I've accumulated. So then no one knew about how wealthy this guy was. So like I said, people would come up to him and actually offer to pay for his meals, but he thought he looked so poor. So his wife didn't know, his stepchildren didn't know,
even his wife,
coworkers, didn't know. Like maybe they knew that he like, oh yeah, he has like some stock certificates, because he would actually have like the physical stock certificate. Everything's online these days, but he would actually have the piece of paper that says I own a share in GE. And so clearly the wife and the kids were probably aware of that aspect and his interest in the Wall Street Journal. But he gave no indication of how wealthy he was. He was uber frugal. Like in his later years, he would go to a lawyer and he would get a lawyer to work out his estate. So I guess the only other person that knew until he died was the lawyer. Yeah. The lawyer said he wouldn't park nearby because it was pay parking. So he would park like half a block away to free parking and walk over. So kind of goes to show you how cheap, or I don't know whether to call him a cheapskate or being very frugal, but he has to make the money work for him and save every penny in the kind of jobs that he had.
Sure.
Yeah. What am I missing here? So yeah, when he died in 2014, he had 95 stocks like shares in 95 different companies, I think it was. They were diversified across many different industries, but like I said, all like big American companies. And I think he didn't invest in like Apple or big tech companies. I don't think that was
Yeah.
his cup of tea. So do you want to guess how much money he left behind?
Like
So, so it's like
uh,
60, 50, 60 years of investment, but with a very low income.
$5 million.
Very close, very close. He left behind $8 million, and that was
Wow.
mostly in stock.
Wow.
So that's a very incredible achievement. Although, I mean, he never really got to spend or enjoy it. So I don't know. I think he took it to another level, but it just goes to show how much you can um, set aside if you're a diligent investor and you are frugal.
But the principal came from obviously his salary and his earnings, right? But most of that came from stocks, yes, as you said.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
the by far it was in stock and shares. So all like the $8 million was not just coming from stocking away his savings from his income as a janitor or
I wonder how much
gas
he put
station
in.
attendant.
I wonder how much his principal was for to get to the 8 million. How much he invested?
Well, I guess part of it would be like how it compounds. So over
Yeah.
time, if he just kept on putting in like the money he was getting out as a dividend and reinvesting it into those companies, then it's a pretty amazing way to make money.
Yeah.
Because then you just buy more
Yeah. Yeah.
stock and
Totally.
more shares of that, and then you get more dividends from that, and then it just keeps snowballing and getting bigger and bigger. So
Yeah.
it's a really interesting and old school way of doing things. And the other great thing that he did was because of his visits to the lawyer, he was handling his will and his estate. So he left behind $2 million to his children, his friends, and his caregivers
Oh, that's
at that
nice.
hospital that he was connected to from the
Yeah.
coffees and English muffins.
Yeah.
He gave $4.8 million to that hospital,
Wow.
and this is a pretty small, like local hospital in Vermont, so it's a pretty
Yeah. Yeah.
significant amount of money for them. And even more significantly, proportionately for this organization, he gave 1.2 million to that library where he read the Wall Street Journal every
That's
day, and
that's
that like that blew their minds because again they were really really small,
yeah.
and it allowed them to create some sort of like scholarship or endowment to keep them
Yeah.
going forever.
That's so for him
So
it wasn't really about the money per se, right? It was just to kind of live my life, see if I can do this. I like
so
investing in
as far as
stocks.
I could tell, like it's a bit too extreme for me. If I had saved that much money and I knew that I was comfortable, because I know there's some people who are paranoid. They don't know where the next paycheck's coming from, and they
Totally.
save everything. I'm a little bit like that because you never know when, you know, a big global pandemic can come or a big things like that. Um, but you know, you do want to spend some of your money. And I think he did. From what I understand, he paid for college for his step children. He paid
Oh,
for
that's
their
nice.
tuition, but I'm not sure he spoiled them. Like he didn't splash out because, like I said, no one really knew how much money he had. They just thought, well, it's nice of him to pay for college. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think it's a bit too extreme how he didn't pay for parking. He walked away from a distance.
I think it's
But it's a
habitual. I
lesson.
think
It's a very he grew up kind of to a poor family
yeah,
in Great Depression, World War II. So it's probably like ingrained in
ingrained.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I've heard of stories like this, and I don't know specifics. I mean, there are people that are like secret millionaires and they don't tell it. There are other people who are cheap. I was just gonna say about being frugal. I think it's habitual, right? I just don't. I think like if you grow up like that because of his background or his environment, maybe it's just one of the. I don't think it's like an active thing that he likes to do. It's just something that he just does, maybe even unconsciously. You know what I mean? Because I've met people who are frugal and cheap, and like it seems weird. I'm not by the way, and like neither is my like the most people I know. But like I don't think it's just like an active thing that they're doing to be like to be like a problem or cause issues. It's just one of those things that's just ingrained in them. Like you know what I mean? Like So like maybe, and plus he's like this old dude who's got no wife. His kids are older. Like, what does he need his money for? Like, chopping wood or
Yeah, and
whatever.
he was in like rural Vermont, which is not a really expensive place to be. He probably paid his house off, and he had all this money to keep investing. So, um, yeah, I guess it made me think of this movement that started after the like last financial crisis in 2007, 8. Have you heard of it? FIRE, Financial Independence, Retire Early.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it's this movement that came from the U.S. About people who wanted to ensure their financial security, but from a very young age. And these are people who are like extreme savers, and their
Okay.
mission is to like put away, I guess, a much higher percentage of their take-home salary or income.
Okay. And how do you do
And
that? Like,
then,
what's
but
the
I think the thing is like the people that I've seen who've done it, they more often than not were not janitors or gas station attendants. They had jobs in like tech, and they had pretty good money. So what helps these people is that a tech job you can do in like pretty much any location, and it pays pretty well. So
yeah,
I think they probably moved out of San Francisco or New York City to like Colorado or somewhere, Montana, somewhere
cheaper?
cheaper.
Yeah.
And then they went crazy and just saved like 70, 80%. And then I could see how you could end up saving a huge chunk of money and whatever. But then it leaves the question of, for these people, like, you got to figure out what you want to do if you manage to like retire by the age of 40.
Totally.
Like, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? If this guy got bored and he went back to work, still
Yeah.
some people get bored.
I think now that you talk about it, I did watch a video of some dude who was like retired by the time they were 30 or 35, and they live in a smaller house with a family and this and that. And my big thing was like, that's so cool that you did that, but what do you do now? Like, you're going to be retired longer than you're going to be would have been employed, right? So like yeah, and then like you, I'm not like, I like finding a balance between being frugal and being excessive too. So like, if I want to go out for a coffee as opposed to make one at home, I don't want to double think that, you know what I mean? But like, of course, I'm not going to buy the Ferrari down the street as opposed to like maybe not having a car or something like that. But like, I think to each their own. But I like the idea that this guy learned about the stock market from the library, which I'm a big proponent of, and then he was able to kind of make it work for himself. Do you think like he must have figured it out? Do you think it was hard for him, or did he have some type of background in investments and stocks, or was it just
As far
like
as I understood, he's
clicked?
totally self-taught. I think the friend he made at the hospital, the director of the hospital,
Yeah,
probably guided him a little bit. But from what I understood, he just read the Wall Street Journal and he loved it. He got addicted to it,
he got
and
addicted.
yeah, it's something that I'm kind of thankful I was exposed to. Um,
Tell us your
I can't
journey. Dave's
I
a
can't
secret
really.
billionaire.
It's hard for me to think about like where it started. I guess I was always a bit of a cheapskate, and like I did work some part-time jobs. I delivered the penny saver, so like a local advertising classified newspaper for in Canada for people who don't know,
Yeah.
and it paid me like pennies. I did odd jobs like mow the lawn or whatever, and I liked making the money, but I never really got into like buying stocks and investing until I was a bit older. So like my parents um, were a bit exposed to that world. So my dad was a doctor, and they had sort of like a financial advisor, and I was always intrigued by like what's going on there. I don't really know what that's all about. It seems really foreign and complicated, but I want to know more about it because it involves money.
Yeah.
And I ended up just, I think, reading some books about it, and then one book led to another. And then I started reading, like I didn't read the Wall Street Journal, but I don't know, New York Times, Financial Times. I still read to this day, and it's just a really interesting world. Um, and what I ended up doing was I actually did do something like this guy. I bought share certificates. So I actually have. It's super old school. Back when I first started in 2008 or nine, I ended up buying a share certificate for the Bank of Nova Scotia, so a
Yeah.
big Canadian bank, and then I bought a share certificate for Bell Canada, so like the biggest
Telecom.
telecom company in Canada, and what you can do there was kind of like what he did is these are companies that are really old and really crusty old Canadian businesses that have been around for like 200 years.
Yeah.
So they're like as blue chip as it gets in Canada, but they pay a very solid dividend of like 5%, which is a pretty good amount. So you can do this thing. You just buy one of these certificates, and then you can just sign this form and say reinvest the money. So I just figured I'm young. I'm just going to do this and then let the money keep buying more and more of the shares.
Yeah.
So that was my first foray into the world of investing, and then I got addicted and haven't stopped since.
Does the entire, like, you understand, would you say that you understand the entire system of how it works, or is it pretty much I understand it, there's some things I don't, or in the middle? Or
I don't think I think I'm in the middle. I don't think anybody really understands it. Like it's so crazy and volatile. But like, do you do investing? Do you buy shares?
When I came to Carleton University when I was 17 years old, I owned, just before I left, I invested $1,500 in a bunch of shares, and I lost it all. I think I might have pulled out a little bit before I lost it all. I have this memory that I was coming from class and I hadn't paid off an investment, and the bank called me as I was walking to class, and they're like, "You need to pay this." And I was like, "I'm going to class," and pretty much the lady was like, "We don't care. You need to pay your thing off," because I guess I hadn't paid it off yet, or I'd owed something. So I didn't know what I was doing. I lost a little bit of money, and I don't play the stock market. I'm old school. I just keep cash under my mattress from whatever source I've obtained it from. So
maybe some Bitcoin or something.
It's a Bitcoin, but I think it's fascinating though. All of it's fascinating. Like I told you in a couple episodes back, I watched a show called Billions, and he's a stockbroker or stock market player, and so he understands.
I just started watching that.
It's horrible. It makes you feel like it will turn you into a horrible person, like if you become like that. But it's an interesting system. I think those people who are really into it are really into it. My what would you call it? My wife, not my wife, sorry, my a relative's cousin, but not my direct cousin or anything. They're like a private stockbroker. And I went to their house one time, and it was just an office with like monitors with like data all over it, And so I guess he was trying to explain that, like, oh, if coffee does this in Africa, then I invest in this, and if the oil,
he's into commodities,
and stuff.
Wow.
So I don't know. I think I have a very addictive personality. I don't think I'd be good at it. I just sit in front of the computer all day, like watching these numbers go up and down.
Well, I think I've spoken to a few people about it, and I try to encourage people wherever possible to invest. And I don't think it's something to be afraid of. It's actually pretty accessible once you get your head around it.
Okay.
And the key is it's like good ammunition is to like inform yourself so that other people don't take advantage of you, because like once you start making a certain amount of money, people maybe say, hey, you should be putting your money in this investment and da 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 da. And so I know some people who like didn't know any better, and they lost a lot of money because they trusted some stockbroker or something.
What's your philosophy in investing? Are you like risk averse? Are you like very high risk? Are you in the middle? What kind of things do you invest in? Give us a portfolio summary.
So it's a bit complicated for me because I left Canada in 2010, and from that like 2008 2010 period, I like built up a very small little portfolio of stocks.
Yeah.
But that was a very good learning experience for me, because I thought like, well, if I lose this money, I won't be broke, but it's a good way to learn something. And thankfully, I haven't lost everything. But the difference was I only started investing like with new money again in 2017 when I moved to the Netherlands and opened up a trading account.
Yeah, here.
Like what I do in the Netherlands, yeah. But I don't trade, so I'm not someone who's like, I do check the market. Like it's something I will do every day, but I won't sit in front of a computer and like buy and sell and be jumpy. I made those mistakes a long time ago, and I saw something that happened. It caused one share to go down. I panicked and sold it. It's like the exact opposite of what you should do. So like what I do and where I put most of my money is in it's called exchange traded funds.
Okay.
And they're basically like the modern form of mutual funds, where it trades as a stock. Like it goes up and down. It's listed on the stock market, but it actually contains like a portfolio of loads of different companies. So what I have is like a ETF, which owns like 5,000 stocks. So it's super diversified. So in theory, like you could put in a lot of money into those things and it shouldn't go to zero, because if all those companies go broke, then there's bigger problems in the world.
And do you find that like, oh, sorry, please, sorry, go ahead.
No, there's, I mean, to answer your question, you could say it's quite risky because I'm putting a lot of my money into stocks. But I think possibly what's more risky is not investing, because then you lose out on the growth that's happening in the stock market or in the world.
What would you say to someone who's like, I don't like, I'd rather just buy real estate, or I'd rather buy like an RRSP or something guaranteed by the government, or like not go through the traditional stock route for an investment? Pitch it to me, convince me. No.
Well, I think like people, especially in the last decade, have made a lot of money from real estate, because like everything that's an asset has, that's not cash, has gone up in value like crazy. But the thing is, real estate is largely something that's funded through debt, and it's like the biggest purchase you'll ever make. So it really takes someone who is wanting to take a lot of risks, because with stocks, and you can take out a loan to buy stocks, but not many people do that because that's quite risky. But if you were to buy multiple properties, there's the risk that like there's a global pandemic and people clear out of a town, you could be concentrated in a particular neighborhood, and for some reason like the industry that was there moves away and you're stuck with these properties which you are on the hook for, and that can cause problems. So I think for an everyday like investor, the stock market is probably the most accessible, like liquid thing. So you can put money in and take money out. Whereas when you buy a property, your money is stuck in that property unless you sell it, or unless you rent it out and get income from it.
And I guess everything's online now. So like putting money in, selling, buying, all this stuff is pretty easy, right? When it comes to the stock, it's at the touch of a fingertip, right? You do it on your phone.
Yeah, which is also dangerous. I've seen stories like there's this Robinhood app, which is like really trying to make stock investing look like Instagram, or it's very, millennial in its design. So there's been a lot of people, especially this year with the coronavirus, there's been a lot of volatility in the stock market going up and down. So it's made people quite interested in the stock market, and people have really signed on to this Robinhood thing. You hear these horror stories of people who don't really know what they're doing, and they do really complex investments and have lost, like, they've lost everything. And they're teenagers because there's very few controls. Some of them were like investing, and I don't know how it was allowed, but they ended up losing like, hundreds of thousands of money they never had.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. So there's been some sad stories around that, but I think largely, giving people greater access to investing, if it's done in an informed and measured way, it's very appropriate for people to do.
Do you think in the following year, post-pandemic or nearing the end of the pandemic, markets will kind of start to be less volatile and kind of go back to a steady trend? Or do you think it's a bad time to be investing now?
No, I think in general, it's never a bad time to invest, as long as you take like a long-term approach. I think start today and don't look. So it's fun to check and see what's going on up and down. Like this year really gave me a bit of panic because I have quite a lot of money, most of my money invested in stocks, and things really went bad in March and April. But I didn't sell. Like I learned from my lessons of 10 years ago, and I didn't panic and sell anything. And it's right now, because the stock market has reacted to like the vaccine. So it's kind of weird how the stock market encompasses all these different companies, in like Disney and Netflix, to a big industrial chemical company, so different, but they kind of react the same to like general economic news. And so something like the vaccine news means that the world can start getting back to normal. And that's really made stocks move. And in the last month or so, it's really helped things go back on an upward trajectory. But
That's awesome.
I guess people should just put some money in and take a long-term view, and you should in general be okay as long as you stay diversified.
This gentleman, Mr. Ronald Read, if it's $8 million and if we'd reverse engineered it, the majority of which must have come from compound interest, right?
Yeah. And compound interest, that's something that Einstein, he called it the eighth wonder of the world, or maybe the ninth wonder of the world.
Okay.
Because it's incredible how, the problem is you have to be 92 years old to achieve the full benefits of compound interest, because it really starts to show its power in the later years of it working. So, the snowball, that's what compound interest is like the snowball effect. It starts off very slowly, but it accumulates. And then your money is making money off of money, and it just gets bigger and bigger. So I guess in the last 3, 4, or 5 years of his life,
he really made
probably like 5 million to 6 million to 7 million to 8 million very quickly.
Yeah. Interesting.
No, it's interesting. Yeah, and the other cool thing about it is, I guess, that you shouldn't judge a book by the cover is the other story here. Because he was a nice guy, but from what it sounds like, people were offering him food, and he sounded like a nice dude to the stepkids and stuff. But then, yeah, he looked like he was poor, and he worked jobs which would make people think that he didn't have much saved away. But you should never judge. You might see someone driving a BMW, but they're broke.
Yeah.
Or you see someone driving a rickety old car, and they're loaded. So it's a kind of an interesting story. And I'll tell another quick one. This is to do with my family. I hope my dad's okay with it.
We'll find out.
Yeah, we'll find out very shortly if he gets that far in this podcast. It's a story that stuck with me for some time. It must have been, I don't know, 20 years ago now. So my dad, like I said, he's a doctor. He was a specialist doctor, an anesthetist, and he would often work night shifts. He would work day shifts, but he would work all hours because medicine doesn't stop. And for some reason, one day he finished a night shift and was coming back home at 7, 8 in the morning, and something got to him where he thought, I want to go shopping for a car. I want to buy a car. I'm tired of this car. And so he went to the local car dealership around the corner from our place. And he walked in, probably unshowered, unshaved, wearing t-shirt and shorts and sandals, probably looking a little bit disheveled. Is the best way to characterize it. And he said, "Hi there, I'd like to test drive that car." And he pointed towards a nice sports car. And the sales assistant said, "Sir, I think this may not be within your budget or within your range."
Okay.
And my dad said, "Is that right? Well, thank you very much, and have a nice day." And he turned out and went home.
Yeah.
And when he got home, I think what happened was he called the dealership and told the manager that who he was. I'm a physician. I'm going to tell everyone in the auto hospital what a disgrace you are. And by within an hour, he had 3 voicemails from the dealership saying, "Sorry, we shouldn't have done that. We really should not have treated you in that way." And my dad said, "Too late. I'm sorry. You had your chance."
I love stories like that. That's so cool.
So there's the story of this dude reminded me of my dad, where he was judged for how he looked. And basically don't judge people for how they dress, how they look, and how they act.
Well, I would rather a wealthy person dress the way Ronald Read did than dress rich and be an asshole. You know what I mean? So again, we cannot judge anything by its cover at all. But amazing story, amazing thing, great financial acumen Mr. Read had. Good for him. And I'm sure if he had more time, he could have invested that money and made more money. But I guess that wasn't his goal really in life. It was just a side project. And at least he was comfortable. Even if he was frugal, at least he knew that he didn't suffer in life, right? Financially. He always had a roof over his head, food in his stomach, could send his kids to school.
Yeah, I guess his diet of peanut butter and English muffin and coffee didn't do him too badly. So yeah, I think he is a good lesson in Mr. Reed's story. So
It's really
um,
interesting. So my wife works, like my wife's background is in like financial banking. It's mostly Islamic banking, Islamic finance. So like whenever she's looking at kind of different, she's analyzed like different financial systems and stocks and this around the world, and it's really unique because like the whole world doesn't do the same thing when it comes to banking. For example, like the Arab Muslim world, they don't have compound interest because they don't work on interest, for example,
oh
right? Yeah, so it's different, right? Whereas in where we grew up, it's very much the so it's really interesting just to analyze how the world kind of looks at money and how they get to it, and what works, what doesn't work, where people are safe, where not. I think the 2008 crisis really showed kind of the volatility in the loan structure and housing purchases and buying things on credit. That was a real negative as well. So I think as we go forth in civilization, as we get more knowledge, hopefully we can create systems which are safe for both uh, us as what do you call them, as users of these
yeah,
systems, and the people on top who seem to always benefit from the system.
they get
Yeah.
bailed out in the end, and the poor guy suffers. So
Oh
I
yeah.
think the lesson for the everyday average Joe, as they say, is don't get sucked in by those
Yeah, totally.
financial maneuvers and these people, these slick dudes. Just do what Mr. Reed did, and you'll be fine. Don't get sucked in by the consumer lifestyle.
But like, have you noticed one thing? Like where you live in the Netherlands, I find that in retrospect, looking back at life in North America, the need for money and like the want for making money to live a happy, healthy life is very prevalent. Like it's very much ingrained in our society. It's on the news. It's on this. It's on that. Where you live, do you find it's the same in Europe or not so much?
No, not so much. I mean, the Netherlands, quite a bit more than Hungary, where I lived
Hungry.
before. But it's very much an Anglo-Saxon thing. Like in the United Kingdom, buying shares is part of the discourse and conversation a lot more.
Mm.
But I have to say, like I've got quite a few Canadian friends here, and a big topic of
Money.
conversation is what shares are you buying? Are you investing in
Uh,
this? So it's very much in like the North American mindset
mindset.
and mentality, which I mean, it can be done in an unhealthy way, but for the most part, I think people they're not investing like their kids' college fund in stocks.
Is it
That'll go
money is such a
bankrupt.
huge yeah, money is such a huge topic of discussion. I think as you get older, and as when you're a father or like you're the head of your household, or just as I think money always becomes something that you're always worried about. You talk about with friends, you try to achieve, you try to go. But it's interesting. Like I find that it's more manifest kind of in Western societies as opposed to in other places where people don't talk about it as openly, or perhaps it's not the central objective of one's life. Yeah. So in some places
Yeah,
it's very okay to talk about it. In other places it's very taboo. You're not supposed to talk about money at all, right? So
and
yeah, I
people's
don't know.
salaries, like
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like. I actually don't remember in Canada, but I think in Canada people actually talk about their salaries fairly
Yeah.
openly. Um, and I also think in there's California where they made it a law where it's not it's totally free. You won't be punished as an employee to talk about your salary because some
Ah,
contracts as an employee, they say you are not to disclose your salary.
yeah.
And now in California, they said ignore that. It's fine. You won't get
Go
punished.
crazy. Yell it from the
Yeah,
roof.
yeah. Shout it out.
Yeah.
So
What's your approach? Are you like, do you talk about money a lot and stocks and this and that, or are you more on the private side and you're like, hush, hush, just me and my brain?
no, I do find it interesting to like learn about what people are doing with their money and what they buy and invest in. I mean, I don't want to know too much information, like how much money they have, or hear people like brag about the size of their bank account. But
Yeah.
I think it's cool just to hear like, oh, that's an interesting company, and this is doing this,
Yeah.
because you do kind of learn about the world that way too. You learn
Totally.
about different opportunities and technologies that way. So that's cool.
Have you ever had it where you've learned about something that someone's done that's been like made them a lot of money, and you've just been like envy? You're like, son of a bitch.
Yeah, I think the ones where I feel like I missed out on in a way, or well, one is Shopify. It's this
Yeah.
company from Ottawa, which is now like New York Stock Exchange listed, huge. And
Yeah.
I was actually like on the same soccer team as one of the founders, and
No way.
got to know a few of the guys through that. And I just thought, oh, Shopify, okay, what is that? It's just a company technology. I don't really know much about it. Good luck with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And then a few years later, I checked the news and I saw them buzzing the stock
The bell.
bell at the New York Stock Exchange, and I thought, oops. And
Yeah.
even then, I didn't invest. I just thought I don't really get it, and it's gone from like $30 to 1,200 something. So I
Wow.
probably should have put some money in there. And then one where I was somewhat successful was the marijuana, the marijuana stocks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't put that much money in. I put in I think like $100 into one of them, and it went up like 8 times, 10 times. So I made a pretty good
Wow.
amount of money that way. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think by and large, you shouldn't be putting big chunks of money into speculative things or individual stocks.
There you go. Yeah, you have to remember too, people who like do this on a professional level, like have years of experience and education and background, and even
Yeah,
they lose money
and they
too.
get it wrong
So
too.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very, like you said, speculative, unorganized, like uncertain field. But it is interesting to learn, and I definitely would love to learn more about it. So yeah. Well, thank you,
Very
Dave.
nice.
That's very fascinating. Very
Yes.
interesting. You dressed for the talk as well. You dressed as
Like a businessman. Actually, I didn't dress like Mr. Read. I probably should have been wearing something different. But
yeah. I saw like you have like
it's
a nice
okay.
fancy watch on one of your wrists too. You got to downgrade if you want to be like him.
Yeah. Well, there we go.
Anyways, stay safe, stay healthy, and I guess I'll see you next
And
time.
stay invested.
Stay invested.
All right. That's
Take
it
care.
for Super Respectable week 15 or 16.
Something like that. Bye.
Bye.